I've always said that the ladies of The View can be treacherous, that you should be very careful in sitting down and having that interview. If I ever was able to sit down and have an interview on The View, I would be very leery and I would be very worried because I would have no idea what Whoopi, or for that matter, what somebody else on that stage is going to say to me, or the direction those conversations could go, because sometimes they come out of left field. When you're dealing with a typical news person and having a conversation, you, for the most part, have an idea of where they're going to go because you have an idea of where their mind works. They basically have been stenographers for most of their life, so they're not going to get these kind of interesting questions that are off the wall or that regular people may have in watching somebody who they probably think is massively and ridiculously corrupt, whereas the media person just sees him as Bob, his buddy, the guy he has lunch with every so often. That's the guy he's supposed to be holding accountable, his friend. Well, The View is a little different because even though, I suppose they do these interviews all the time, they come across a little bit more earthy, a little bit more down to earth, even from the standpoint of being in a different class. Some of the questions and some of the things and conversations they have could be off center. Yes, some of them are just Democrats. Megan is a Republican. By the same token, they are not political in the traditional sense of overt political actors. It's a very interesting show and some of the interviews that they come up with. But like I say, be careful. Mark my words. I've said the same thing about Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is one of the best interviewers in the business. And it's not because he's asking these kind of establishment questions. It's more so that what he asks sometimes is off the wall. Sometimes it's this kind of just everyman, very basic, straightforward question. And sometimes those things yield really interesting results. Rogan is a master of that. And oftentimes I've seen people walk into a trap when he's having those conversations. Jordan Peterson is probably the first one that's coming to mind. But in this very specific case, Rush Limbaugh. At the very least, I'm starting it off with Rush Limbaugh as the topic. And this comes across almost as a eulogy. And the eulogy is damning. Not just for Rush Limbaugh, but also for the Republicans, especially when Whoopi Goldberg gets her say. Meghan McCain doesn't like this. And she tries to push back on this. The problem is, what she's saying is conspicuously, provocatively ridiculous. It makes no sense in real terms. Meaning, I don't have an issue with Meghan McCain pushing back on some of the people that are saying things about her, but what she's saying is just so off the wall. And it's sometimes the things that Republicans say about Democrats that people who are on the left look at that and say, what the hell are you talking about? It doesn't line up to reality. That's the point that I'm making here. You can push back on these guys, especially since these guys are Democrats, so you can show the hypocrisy and some of the things that they say and they believe in. But the way you went with this, absurd. Eulogy. Rush Limbaugh. Apt and deserved eulogy of Rush Limbaugh. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. I am also on Roth Canal, so definitely check out the account over there. There's special content that is not necessarily on this channel. The View is interesting at times, and this is one of those times. I know I'm pretty strong on this notion that when a person dies, their works and how they operated on this earth matters. And I don't see the point in lying about how they did. When I die, you can put each and every video that I've ever made, flaws, warts, and all, on my tombstone or wherever you're going to put me, and let it run in perpetuity forever. I can accept it. If you want to say bad things about me, fair enough, say bad things about me. I expect those bad things to be said about me if they're against people that I consider to be my enemies. That's just kind of par for the course. The thing here, though, is Rush Limbaugh has basically lived a life that was not one that was dedicated to service of the human race. Rush Limbaugh was in service entirely and completely to himself and spent years, decades, putting bowel, filth on the radio waves to people who, I'm pretty sure that there was a fan base out there that loved that level of bowel and filth as he talked about blacks and gays and Hispanics and women, etc. By the same token, those groups that he castigated, those groups that he maliciously hit every day, they can also have a point of view with him. And it's not necessarily a good one. So when that person does this world a service and drops dead, of course, he didn't drop dead earlier because Rush Limbaugh was all about himself, and if he would have dropped dead early, he wouldn't have been able to put that much bow or make as much profit as he made putting that bow out on the airwaves. But he has, at this point, dropped dead. And now people are going to give their own eulogies about what they think about Rush Limbaugh. And I think what you're going to find is that the overwhelming majority are going to be indicative of the life that he led on this planet, and it wasn't to the good. He is looking up somewhere right now, if he is still around. And hopefully he sees all of this. And he is in a position where you can't necessarily put on airs. In OBE stuff, when a person is out of body, when a person is kind of in these lucid dream states, the notion of your ascendant, yourself, your person, the person who you interact with the world, the facade that you put up to kind of mask the true you because you don't want that true you to be held up to criticism or whatnot. That is not really there. It's just you. It's just honesty. And hopefully, with all of the things that are being said and everything else, it gets across something to him that wasn't necessarily got across in life, and it has to do with you were a miserable fucking human being, and I hope you bust hell wide open. Let's listen to The View and hear what they had to say about Limbaugh.
He said a ton of despicable things that we don't even have enough time on one show to cover. But some of the most offensive were at the LGBTQ community during the AIDS epidemic. He used to run a regular segment called AIDS Updates, and mocked the deaths of gay men by playing Dionne Warwick's I'll Never Love This Way Again. And as recently as 2020, said the country couldn't handle Pete Buttigieg as a president because they'd be sick watching him kiss his husband. This stuff is just, I have a visceral reaction to so many of his words, but the first thing that ran through my head when I saw the news was, now it's Judgment Day. At the end of our lives, it's just us answering for everything we did, who we were, what we said, and how we treated people. And so now, Judgment Day has arrived for Rush Limbaugh. He said
I love that. Judgment Day. Judgment Day has arrived to Rush Limbaugh. And I love the fact how she kind of made the point of like, these things were vindictive and hateful and spiteful. And you can make this argument that, oh, he was a comedian and everything else. I'm telling you, the people who are the butt of those jokes didn't necessarily think that shit was funny. If you were one of those people that were dying of AIDS, yeah, I don't think you would have thought it was funny to see that shit on Rush Limbaugh either. Look, Rush Limbaugh died of lung cancer, and I don't wish any harm on pretty much anybody. But by the same token, I'm not going to pretend that the person lived a decent life and the person didn't live a decent life. Here's a little bit more. Now, this expands out to the Republican Party as a whole. And Meghan McCain is in this one. And so you're going to be able to hear Meghan McCain's take about this, who, of course, didn't bring up Limbaugh at all.
The QAnon party, it's the Confederate flag statue-loving party. It is the Trump party. That is the party of today. And those that refuse to be a part of that type of party get censured, get nasty letters from their families, get ostracized. That is what our country is looking at today. The party of white supremacy, the party that carries swastikas into the Capitol. That is what we're looking at. So I know that people are disappointed.
Easy to say that the Republican Party is only the party of QAnon and all these things. If that's the truth, then the Democratic Party is the party of socialism and late-term abortion and cancel culture. And
I'm going to start this over so she can start from scratch. I don't want to interrupt her. Here's the difference. Donald Trump was president for 4 years. Donald Trump praised those Nazis, or at the very least didn't necessarily take anything out of those Nazis from Charlottesville. Donald Trump, raised an insurrection that basically raided the Capitol, knowing that those people were going to be in danger, even knowing Mike Pence was in danger as he was tweeting against Mike Pence. The QAnon movement, all of these things were part of the Trump campaign, the Trump movement. No, I don't think you can say all of Republicans are like that. That's a bit strong. But I think the point that they're trying to make here, that she's trying to make, is the people who are on the forefront, the people who are out there, the people who raided those capitals, those were Trumpers. And that, in large part, is the Republican Party. At the very least, that's the thing that won in the Republican Party. There's a secondary question of whether or not that maintains itself, especially as Republicans try to distance themselves, the McConnells, the Mitt Romneys of the world, try to basically create a separation between who they are as a Republican Party versus who Trumps are. And the problem that they're going to have is that it's going to basically split the party. How do you keep the Trump energy without keeping Trump? And that's the problem that these guys are going to have in the Republican Party as they try to split the baby on this front. Nikki Haley, Brian Kemp, all of these people have started to pull away from the Republican Party and separate themselves from Trump, saying there's a difference between who he is and who I am. So it's not entirely fair to say that the Republican Party is like that. Fair enough. I get where Meghan McCain is coming from. By the same token, let's not pretend that that is not what was on display for the last 4 years. From Meghan McCain's standpoint, it is utterly and entirely fucking provocatively ridiculous to say that the Democratic Party is the party of socialism. When Joe Biden gets up there and says, I beat the socialists. When the entire party collapses to get rid of Bernie Sanders. When elimination of student debt. When Medicare for all of those things are part of just Democrats, or let's say progressive Democrats. That's not even socialism. And those can't even get on the marquee. I'm saying it is provocatively ridiculous what you're saying right now in order to push back against something that you didn't particularly like. Let's start it over just a little bit. I want Meghan McCain to get a full point in, or at the very least, a full point that's in this clip.
They're disappointed.
Easy to say that the Republican Party is only the party of QAnon and, all these things. If that's the truth, then the Democratic Party is the party of socialism and late-term abortion and cancel culture and no responsibility or ramifications for any of your actions. And you can burn down cities like Kenosha and it's fine and there's no ramifications. These are broad.
Now, this is another right-wing trope that tends to come up, where they would be like, well, wait a minute, why is it wrong that these patriots, quote unquote, can raid the Capitol in this kind of failed putsch attempt, but what took place from the standpoint of the Black Lives Matter protests? Here's the difference. Cops kill over 1,000 people a year. 99% walk, meaning only 1% of cops are charged with anything, and even that is like 33% of that 1% that finds jail time. If people are responding because they feel that the social safety net doesn't necessarily work for them, and after seeing many of these murders take place where there is no consequences for, those people respond. Whether you realize it or not, the social fabric, those things are agreements, and those agreements can be revoked when it comes across as if the state is not taking into the concerns of various groups earnestly or honestly. How on earth do you want people to acquiesce to, let's say, issues of authority when those authorities go overboard, or when that government goes overboard, there's no consequences for their actions? Yeah, those people got angry and those people flipped out, and those people had every right to do so. No, I don't like the burning of the businesses, and many of the businesses, small businesses, those people were just people making ends, just like every other person was making ends, many of which the people were arguing. In fact, many of those business owners were on board and in favor of Black Lives Matter or some of the protests that were taking place, despite the fact, or before the fact, of their businesses being taken down. So yeah, I get that point as being problematic. But the larger point has to do with why they were doing it. And people always have a tendency to ignore the why and look at the immediate results, not what was the inspiring or the incipient action that created those results. So there's a difference between those things. Is the point that I'm trying to make. Let's hear Whoopi. I'm going to let Whoopi respond.
Hoops and giggles. The Republicans have brought this on themselves. They've brought this view of them on themselves because the things that this former president has been supporting has not been good for the whole country. It's good for lots of folks, but it's not good for everybody. And so when we say, listen, you should be a little uncomfortable because we sort of went through this and now we're going to be going through it again. You brought this on yourself. You're thought of this way because that's what you've shown everybody. And when it comes to, let's talk a little bit about women and having babies. Everyone has the right to make the decision they need to make for their life, okay? And so when we talk about what you believe or what this one believes or what that one believes, the bottom line is whatever you decide to do as a woman with your body, that should be between you and your doctor. And sometimes poor women may need help. So that's what this all comes in about. But these are the same issues that we talk about all the time. Do you have the right to decide for me what I should do with my body?
This is kind of the problem with Meghan McCain's argument here. She took an argument that was basically, look, the Republican Party has been doing this stuff, and this has been the thing that has been standing and dancing for the last 4 years. Whoopi Goldberg is pissed here. Part of it is pissed because I don't know what late-term abortions have to do with anything. That's not a black mark to me. All things being equal, no. I don't necessarily want women having abortions if they can avoid having abortions by using like a condom or something like that. But also, I have no feelings with the woman having an abortion. I would even go so far as to say sometimes those abortions are better off for the larger society when they don't have those kids, if there's not going to be anybody to take care of those kids. So, zero issue with it at all. Whoopi here is basically making a point that, look, women can make a choice on their own bodies. We don't necessarily need politicians coming in and saying that woman needs to do this very specific thing with her body. Or for that matter, the stuff that they were doing in Virginia when governors at least last time I was there, were trying to put in laws that the mom, before she can get an abortion, had to look at the ultrasound. And she had to pay for the ultrasound. Meaning we're going to punish mom because they're getting an abortion. This is the type of shit that they were putting through, that Meghan McCain apparently seems to basically love. Cancel culture, yes. That's a factor of the left. That's unfortunate. As for why she's pissed off, and I'll leave it on this one, it's the issue of identity. Part of the reasons that Democrats get this issue of identity is because it's potent. You and your skin matters. A skin identity is skin deep. And if it's something, especially with the history of this particular country, if it looks like there is a threat, if it looks like there's a politician that is catering to a particular side of the political spectrum that may cause physical harm or damage, then yeah, you're going to have various groups that have lived in this country for a long time, especially if they lived through the civil rights movement. They have bad memories of things that this country has done, and in no way believes that that stuff is left. And if anything, believes that that stuff is in the other party, which is what gives Democrats this whole you have nowhere else to go and makes it that potent for African Americans. Why do you think 90% of African Americans vote for Democrat? Do you think it's because they love Joe Biden, or do you think it's because they think the monsters are in the other party? I'm telling you, as an African American, it's because we think the monsters are in the other party. Donald Trump, nothing else, made it plain that they were right. Donald Trump jumped the shark. And some of the things that he did basically wed Democrats to their base, or to at the very least African Americans, that much more. If you notice, Sanders was winning in regards to policy. Do you agree with Medicare for all? Do you agree with climate change legislation? All that stuff. Joe Biden was losing on all that. But the one thing Joe Biden was able to get is basically this notion that black leaders, black associations, etc. It wasn't entirely about the policy that Biden was able to get elected on. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to make here. A lot of it has to do with who is the best person to beat the other guy. When Joe Biden ran in this notion of electability is the argument that African Americans were voting on. When Obama was running against Clinton was winning that race until it became clear that Obama had the potential to win that race, in which case they jumped ship. Of course, they would have loved to vote for Obama in the beginning. But if it didn't look like he was going to win, if he didn't look like he could keep the monsters at bay, he wasn't going to get their vote. Same thing with Sanders and Biden. If they believed that Biden was the one who could keep the monsters at bay, Biden was going to get their votes. It didn't matter the other policy stuff. Healthcare is nice, but you got to be able to win first. Hence, the electability was the fight that needed to be had by Sanders, and that was the fight that he entirely abdicated. I'm making a point that for black voters, Trump made it clearer, not less clear, if you know what I mean. Whoopi is pissed here because Whoopi has a clear association of Donald Trump with the worst aspects of the things that she probably lived through. And look, I don't think she's insane on that very specific point. Yeah, eulogy for Rush Limbaugh. And if you want to say Rush Limbaugh was the worst aspects of the Republican Party, you can do that. But Rush Limbaugh basically was Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump put the Medal of Freedom around Rush Limbaugh, that image in and of itself should have told you everything that you needed to know about Donald Trump. For one, that he would give somebody like that medal who lived a life of bile and hatred, that's the guy you're going to give the Medal of Freedom to, the guy that wants to basically curtail the freedom of others in this kind of Orwellian ceremony. Yeah, Rush Limbaugh did us a favor and dropped dead. If there's an alien species that is looking at this planet, or that has looked at this planet for the last 70 years, it got one iota brighter yesterday when Rush Limbaugh stopped breathing and his head hit the floor. Whoopi, yes, agreed. Meghan McCain, your argument is utterly ridiculous. The first two women, also agreed. Like, share, and subscribe.